for listening. So, today is episode 2 of our podcast series, 10-Minute Marketing. And I've got Marika here with me
Hey,
today.
how are you?
Great, thank you. So, all right, so today we've got some topics we're going to cover, but a few housekeeping rules. Number one, I move fast. We've got 10 minutes to talk about a particular topic for today. So make sure you've got your tablet out or a pen and paper ready to take notes. Also, if there are any technical terms that I cover as we're talking and you're not sure of the meaning, then you can always go back to sonyacrystal.com/blog. And if you found it on our blog and you're not listening through iTunes, then just make sure you glance through the glossary of terms that I included at the end of our post, and that'll give you additional information along with any websites that I reference when I do these podcasts. It'll be there as well. All right, cool. So Marika is joining us from Go Getter Marketing Group, which is the marketing agency I co-founded.
Mm-hmm.
And Marika is going to kind of lead by positioning herself as one of the clients that we get
Yeah.
these questions from, and she's going to ask today's question.
Okay, so I have a blog now and I want some blogs created. Should I write the blogs or should I hire a writer?
Okay, great question. So, yes, I have gotten this question a lot, and I have a few different options and answers for you. So, I'm going to walk through 3 different options you really have to answer that question. Should I hire a writer or should I do it myself? All right, so option number one, yes, you can do it yourself. I think this is a good option if you are interested in writing. If you have no interest in writing, if it is just not your thing, then don't bother. You will bang your head against the wall trying to figure out what am I going to talk about? What should my blog be about? And it's much easier and you will spend less time, even if you don't really have the budget in place. Sometimes it's cheaper to just hire someone from a time standpoint to just do it for you. So, the cases where you could or should do it yourself is number one, if your industry is extremely technical, and if you have a hard time finding a writer who understands your industry and can't really lay out the terms the way you want them laid out, that might be a case. Again, if you enjoy writing, and when you're writing articles as a starting point, they need to be at least 400 words to get picked up by Google for SEO or search engine optimization purposes. So you need to be writing at least 400 word blogs, and that's a starting point. Over time, if you could get up to 1,000, maybe even 2,000 word blogs, that's really a good place to be to get ranked in Google. So you need to be able to write at that level. The other thing is there's a difference between writing the way you wrote for papers in college and writing on a blog. So again, if you're doing it yourself, your blog needs to have some kind of tone, some kind of personality, and the writing style, it needs to have some kind of style. So the writing style needs to come across clear to your readers and you need to be able to connect with your audience. And then just a few other general things. You do need to understand SEO because ideally, going back to rankings, if you want your blog to get ranked and your post to get ranked and your website to get ranked over time, you need to know how to use keywords and what keywords to use in order to get that ranking. So that's my option for your DIYers, those of you who want to do it yourself. That's a good option. And then the final thing I'd say on the DIY standpoint is you need to be consistent. If you're going to do it yourself, then you need to come up with a schedule of how often you're going to post and what you're going to be talking about. And, ideally, if you want to get ranked, again, about 8 posts a month is really the target. But I like to be realistic with business owners. So if you're just getting started out in blogging and this is all new to you, 1 or 2 a month to start, maybe the first 3 or 4 months, and then get up to 4, and then maybe by year 2 get up to 8. And then if you can go even stronger than that, good. But it depends on what industry and what kind of content you're sharing. Okay, option number 2, hire a writer. Hire somebody to do it for you who has tons of experience writing copy. So this could be a freelance person. I recommend do a Google search for, and you could just type the term hire a writer and look for people that can actually cover your niche really well. Now, a few things to know if you're going to hire a writer. Typically, when you're hiring a writer, they want to know, okay, what do you want me to write about? Some writers will be proactive and come up with ideas once they get to know you as a client, but not all writers work that way. So it's important to remember not all writers are created equally. So typically, you need to be prepared to guide that writer and what they are going to be talking about. You also need to be prepared to give them a word count. How many words do you expect your blog to be? So again, you could go back to that guideline I gave you, 400 or so words to start. And then you need to tell them the frequency. How often are they supposed to be submitting blog posts to you? So that's something to think about. And then if you're hiring a writer, it might even go beyond blog posts. Maybe it's just updating copy on your website. Maybe it's writing copy for your social media or Facebook ads. Maybe it's writing copy for an ebook. So just think about different ways you can utilize a writer or even repurpose your blog post once you get that blog up and running. There are a few websites. So here's a few. I think these are good websites to find writers. At Go Getter Marketing, we've used some of these sites personally in finding writers for our clients to cover particular niches. So, one is Upwork.com, and Upwork is just a freelance marketplace. It's not exclusive to writers, it's just a great place, though. You can post the job posting of what you're looking for. These people aren't looking for full time or even part time work, they're just looking for projects. So, that's a good starting point. There is another site called contently.com. That's a great place to find writers. Contently kind of helps facilitate the process of finding writers for you. Hirewriters.com is another one. So these Contently, Hire Writers, and then the last one I'll mention is blogmutt.com. These are sites where they typically, there's a marketplace of writers. They kind of match you with the writer based on your description of what you're looking for, and then you pay per blog post. You're typically paying to the service, not directly to the writer. If you use Upwork, you're paying directly to the writer. So those are the big differences if you're thinking about hiring a writer to work for you. And then, oh, and cost wise, that was a question we talked about, right, Marika?
Mm-hmm.
So, cost wise, how much should I even be paying a writer if I
Mm-hmm.
hire? So, okay, the scale is like all over the place when it comes to hiring a writer. And so you could be paying as little as maybe, 10 or 20 a blog post. I hear 25 to 50 on average for US native English speaking writers, because you can get writers from other countries
Mm-hmm.
to write for you, and that would definitely be less expensive, particularly if they're from somewhere in Europe or
Mm-hmm.
India or the Philippines. So those are other options. You'll find them cheaper there, but you may have to go back and make sure, if they're not native English speakers, that you're editing and carefully reviewing their work. If they're US or Canadian, I often hear 25 to 50, and that's for people who have maybe they've written for a while, but they're not considered kind of the expert level writers. And then I'd say kind of beyond that, if you're working with someone who's kind of expert level and has an extensive background in marketing and PR, then those could be upwards of 100 per post, or they may come up with some kind of package for you if you're getting frequent posts written. So those are things to kind of think about if you're going to hire a writer.
I also wanted to add, when you're paying them, make sure that you tell them how many words that you want,
Mm-hmm.
that you require. The lowest end is 300 words, which is on, if you're using WordPress, it'll tell you on a plugin you need to have at least 30 for it to qualify to show up on Google. And then the bigger end is if you have 1,000 to 2,000 a blog. You also don't want to make a blog too long either. So just wanted to add that.
There we go. All right. And then the last option is hiring an agency to actually do the post for you. So here's the difference with hiring an agency versus doing it yourself and hiring a writer. In both processes, unless you have a very strong vision and plan moving forward, what an agency is going to do and how they approach it, it's not going to be just about writing itself. It's going to be about the strategic side of things. So actually, if you don't have a content strategy in place, like our agency, many agencies will actually take the time to put a strategy in
Mm-hmm.
place for you and really help you come up long term with, where am I going with this content? How is it going to generate leads for my company? What is the call to action with it? They're going to help you and think through with you more strategically what you're doing with that content and how it's going to serve you. The other thing is they'll probably be more proactive in helping you come up with topics when it comes to your blog posts. So, developing a content calendar and having a very clear line of sight in terms of this is what I'm talking about this week, this is the call to action, this is the theme, this is how it fits in with other things happening at my company. Those are some of the things that an agency is really going to think about. And then the other last piece in terms of working with an agency is really the editing process. You're going to have a team of people that are not only writing the post, but also going through an editing and proofreading process, fact checking process. So there are other bits and pieces that just come into play if you're using an agency. Now, here's the thing, sometimes hiring an agency can be just as I'd say kind of inexpensive as hiring a writer. So don't assume just because you're hiring an agency, you're going to pay way more than you would hiring an individual freelance writer. Sometimes, particularly if they're working with you on other pieces of the project, or again, an overall content strategy, the content strategy may be one piece of the pie where you do pay for that. But beyond that, the blog post and the editing and all that, they may package for you. And that might be 50 to 100 per post. Some agencies charge a little bit more, depends on what size agency you're working with, which is another thing. If you're deciding to work with an agency, just making sure you pick the right size agency according to your vision and your goals, and maybe even the revenue you're generating at your company and what makes sense for your marketing budget. All right, so those are your three options when it comes to hiring a writer. And that covers our 10-minute marketing for today. So just remember, you can join my email list or send me your questions or join my community at sonyacrystal.com. And then check out our blog, check out the glossary where there are some answers to some of the technical terms and then different websites we went over today listed. Thanks again, and I will talk to you next time.